Hello, this is a very important philosophical video talking about um, how, yeah. See, I did a video before called Socialism is the Way, and I was talking about the difference between a capitalist and socialist as though it was a religious difference. And so, yeah, I'm going to say that the religious outlook, or the general philosophical outlook of the socialist, is more in line with the reality of history than the capitalist. So capitalist conservative. There's two differing views on life. Okay, we'll start with the capitalist, no, the socialist first. The socialist is a person like me who sees how the world is, evolving and wants to adapt with the evolution, and then, you know, make sure all mechanisms are working smoothly so that everybody, and especially the unit as a whole, is the healthiest. So kids can walk down the street of any neighborhood and not feel safe, and everybody has a job, and everybody can feel free to move around, that kind of stuff. But that everybody should have equal opportunities to get to the top, and that we're all created equal, and we can, and it's a normal thing for somebody who's grow up poor or whatever, to make it big, and we're all equal, and so we need to have our government owned by our stuff owned by the government. I'm rambling too much. And then you have the capitalist, who's kind of like they're all for might makes right, and whoever's on top is on top because they're better and smarter and stronger than everybody else, and so then they get to dictate how things are for everybody else and have more power. And I mean, it's difficult to understand how people can think like that, because they don't really explain themselves that much. They just kind of blurt it out in sound bites as though they all know that that's the way, because it's always been like that. And if you do look at history from a really simple perspective, you see all the wars, and it's power struggles, and then, if you don't boil it, if you don't look into it, you can just have the easy conclusion that humans are just animals, and it's just survival of the fittest. So those are basically the two different ways of looking at how we should manage our society. And the capitalists, they believe that it's actually like a two-tier, like there's two different kinds of people. They're the rich who have all the power and the money, and then the poor, and they have less money. So it's actually a good thing that the rich make so much more money than the poor, because it's like maybe like a mechanism to help weed out the dumb people, because the smart people just identify what the good jobs are and they work towards it. That's doing my best explaining the logic. Yeah, so sorry, losing my train of thought. So they okay, so if somebody were to argue the logic behind that and say how that's natural and that's good, they'd probably point to history and that's kingdoms and all that kind of stuff. Might makes right in the past. But my argument is that the socialist is actually more the general outlook and philosophy of the socialist, who wants the government to, us all to elect everybody in for all of the different jobs and even laws, and keep it even, like the richest guy only making 12 times more than the poorest guy. That's how it is in this guy, economist Richard Wolff, socialist. In Spain, they had a big co-op that was this big, I think, farming community or business. I can't remember what it was. But the richest dude only made 12 times more than the poorest guy, and that is, I think that's more in line with history, because what you're going to get is, if you have the capitalists with the super wealthy who get to make all decisions, is that results in nepotism, this thing called nepotism. Wait, not nepotism. Oh man, it's this other word. Whatever. It results in ass kicking. Well, nepotism too, which is when you just hire people within your own family and circle, but also ass kissing. and people like, for example, in the Roman Empire, Rome was a republic, and then it became a empire where it was only one guy who had control, and he could just slaughter, all the other emperors, and then after a while, the only people who he had around him were neophytes. There you go, neophytes, neophytism, like yes men, yes sir, and then so you would have a bad. Who wrote about this? I think it was Edward Gibbon, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. But one of the Roman writers wrote about this in the time of the Empire Livy or something. The writers become worse because you can't have writers who are actually critical of the guy in charge. Back in the time of all the best writers in Rome were, if you just spout out all the best writers, Cicero. Well, Cicero lived in the Republic before there was an empire, right before the Republic. This is the time of like Julius Caesar. Livy, he was right there at the beginning of the empire. I think time of Augustus. I'm really high, so I'm having trouble remembering stuff, but yeah, all of those writers, and all of even the famous people and exciting times and stuff, and then it becomes degenerative, and so you don't have any famous writers from Rome for like 400 years because it's this neophyte. It's this just yes man world, and nobody could write anything against him. And if they did write something, a history, it was kind of a false history. Like if it was a contemporary, you'd only say good things about the guy, and then afterwards people would just say purely bad things because they got slighted, and so people just fight, and it doesn't, and you didn't have any writer for 400 years really until St. Augustine, which was right at the fall of Rome, when he could write whatever he wanted because Rome was falling. So yeah, that's what you get. You get a breakdown of culture. For example, if you name all the worst countries in the world who had the worst problems, they were the ones that were the most, with the most, genocides and killings and causing problems. Those were the ones that were controlled by the king, the dictator. Like Ceausescu in Romania in the 80s, and Stalin and Hitler and Mussolini and all that kind of stuff. When we have a balanced government, that's what makes America great. Everybody likes to brag. Even the conservatives like to brag about America's great because we're the greatest and all that. But we're in our Constitution. But our Constitution with the 3-tier, the checks and balances where one arm opposes and one arm passes, and then the other one arm has certain things he can, like the executive branch appointing and then having to get confirmed and all that kind of stuff. That is democratic, and that's different from some. For example, when our Supreme Court did the Citizens United. Oh wait, no, what was that? Did the Hobby Lobby last year. And they said the First Amendment was so that the boss of the company with 15,000 workers could say that you can't get health care for birth control because he said so, saying that was the First Amendment. So that's going in the opposite direction of just giving all the power to the few. And so so it's two different philosophical ideas, and so I think if you're gonna I didn't mention this before, but if you're going to explain like two different philosophical ideas and try to make an argument for your point of view, you should use history. History is the best one, and then the best method to show the development of what you're talking about, and then show how your model is in line with what will extend into the future based on what happened in the past. For example, okay, yeah, so I'm going to use that method to explain why socialism is better than capitalism historically. Socialism, people say capitalism is the best because it's the meritocracy. It's whoever's the best gets to rise. But capitalism, when we have our structure, socialism is actually better for allowing people to rise because the idea of allowing people to rise is allowing everybody. You know, you have to have a high social talent pool. That's why Brazil goes to the World Cup every year, because they, or the World Cup finals every time, because everybody there plays soccer. You know, so so that's that. If you don't have, if you have capitalism, then only the rich people have connection. Then how you're cutting off your talent pool, and then it's kind of like the kings of Europe inbreeding and then becoming retarded. You know. Yeah, there's some stories of that, like the Queen Catherine of the Great's first husband. So anyway, yeah. So historically, if you're going to talk about, see, because people think that we have a tradition of the strong man being in charge and then bossing everybody else around, but I think we should, and because of the Middle Ages but I think if we really look at history, what we should really compare ourselves to is tribal societies, and then healthy like empires that are on their way up, and the characteristics that they have, and those are the ones that honor the local traditions of all the people. Tribes is kind of like the original capitalism. You know, you have this tribe over here, that tribe over here, and then you know, they raise their population and do well if they're smart, and then they can spread their new methods to the next one and grow. And when the Roman Empire was on the rise, they did it really well, because they just grew kind of a world empire. They grew a bunch of roads, and they grew a big police force to keep the roads safe. And they built a wall around the empire to keep that safe, and they charged taxes to pay for that. But everything else, they're kind of left up to the local people, even the religion. They would have even in the Roman Empire, they'd have a statue of the emperor as a signal of their unity, but they would each have their own pagan temples and stuff, you know, and maintain their own laws or languages, and then well, eventually spoke Latin, but yeah, you honor the locals, and Rome was on the rise. But then when it turns into just this central force just bossing everybody around, then it falls. You know, like when Rome just became a military that was just fighting each other, different generals fighting each other, and you know, taking their army, and you know, the freedoms of the people go away, and then they get invaded and destroyed, and it has to become like more small scale again. So you had all the different little kingdoms. But but the ones that are the most democratic are the healthiest. Like Germany. Germany did really well, and after the Industrial Revolution, because they had always been like the Holy Roman Empire. They'd just been a conglomeration of independent thinking cities, and you know, not people controlled. Like in South America, I don't think did well because they were under the control of Spain, a big empire, and with this encomienda system, not allowing people to be free and innovate and do, you know, and spending all their energy suppressing people, and you know, causing distrust. So you know, so if you're going to look in history, the bad guys would have been, you know, decadent Roman Empire. That's like a central power structure with an emperor, just one guy, with just trying to gain power. And what else? Then you got like all the dictatorships where one guy's in power, or the business. Yeah, South America. I mean, I'm kind of high, so I'm having trouble giving examples. And then if you look at positive ones, those are all the democratic ones, like America on the rise with our Constitution and all of the grassroots people starting up out of nowhere. So what socialism is it just? What I'm trying to stay focused on though is the general philosophy, basic philosophy. The basic philosophy of I'm going to call them the capitalists, is that like there's two different kinds of people, and if you have a world where you have internet and world travel and everything, you can't have two different kinds of people. You can't have the smart people and the stupid people. Because then some like scientist, I mean, he's probably like a capitalist scientist, wrote a book that in the future there are going to be two kinds of people physically, like the tall, physically fit, strong, smart people, and then the short, squat, like stupid people who just do the work. And that would happen like that if you have a society of capitalism. That movie, The Time Machine, remember? And the guy goes in the future, and it was like that. It was the two groups of people, the smart controllers and then the stupid little workers. And that's not natural, because that's not what it was in the past. We never had that in the past. It was all different individual tribes, and people naturally got sifted within society, naturally, with the tribes. Like the weird outlier people would go off and live in the rocks, by themselves somewhere, and then the smart social people would go in the middle of the valley and trade with other people and make civilizations, and but everybody was protected by just the general law of might makes right, I guess. Or just, no, not that. The general law of just people fighting for their, survival of the fittest against nature, But then when we grow up and we're all in control of nature, and we control everything, and you have to design a system that protects, that keeps that balance, that natural balance, preserves that natural balance, instead of allowing a tyrant to take control like a cancer, And so that's basically where we're at now. We're at a crossroads. If we want to decide if we want Trump, who's going to... I mean, look at Trump. He doesn't let anybody talk back to him. He refuses to go to the other debate and six Ted Nugent on Megyn Kelly just because she asked him a simple question like, is he a misogynist? Because half the people in America are women. And are you a misogynist after saying so many bad things about women? Then he answers it by attacking her. And then there's a reporter went and asked him a question about something. He's like, "Who are you?" And he said who he was. And he's like, "What do you think?" As he's walking away from him. He's just if he got in power, and then you got Omarosa, who's like going to be in his cabinet, who doesn't know how to have a two-way conversation, just tries to piss people off. And it reminds me of back in the days of like medieval England. I was watching the TV show The Tudors, and if you pissed off the king or your superior, you go in and they bark at you and you couldn't say anything, and then you go away, because then if you did, you get off with your head. And that's kind of and then see those kinds of people like Trump. He was out in his rally and he says, "Yes, I'm a believer in breeding." He was kind of like one of those side comments, and yeah, so you breed the rich with the rich, and then you get the super, like the first generation, second generation. I'm 52nd generation, rich with rich. I'm so awesome, It's like, so what are we trying to make breeding people like dogs? Like have the smart dogs up here look different and way up here, and then the dumb dogs that's separated. I mean, that's not. Everybody agrees that segregation was bad, and that all of these. Trying to weed out a certain kind of person, like with the Nazis and the Jews, with the Holocaust, that's all bad. So it's weird how people don't recognize that what all of I'm going to call them the capitalists, the conservative Republicans, trying to just divide, saying that all Muslims can't have to be banned from entering America, and that we need to fortify the war on drugs, and we need to, I mean, you name them, they're going after them, dude. I mean, it's like nobody's safe. I'm a white, 40-plus educated white male in America. Oh, no, I'm a stoner, though. Fuck. I can't even get a job as a midnight stalker. So, yeah, socialism, you see, that's not natural, though. That's some kind of sick empire, that needs to be destroyed. But that's not That's not the same thing as looking at nature with all the different tribes and all the different people. Every nook and cranny or valley or hill you go to, it's a different person with a different custom doing their own thing. And they're all kind of kept in this balance just from nature, keeping them all in balance from the fighting against nature. But now that man's in control, we have to become God. We have to play God, and we have to preserve that law, those natural laws of preserving the freedoms of individual people. For example, in Boulder, I can't get a job as a midnight stalker at any of the local supermarkets. I think Whole Foods doesn't, but at the ones closer to me, Safeway and Walmart. Yeah, I can't get a stalking job. It's like, nah, that's our rule. It's like, oh, I'm college educated. I can prove that I work. And I'm like, no, because some dude way off over there, man, with and 65, the richest 65 people own most of the wealth in the world, and the Waltons own like half the wealth of America, or something like that. It's like back in the Gilded Age. And so, but if we had socialism, we could all, for example, Bernie Sanders, he's a socialist. He wants to legalize marijuana because he understands. He has the right general outlook. He cares about people. And if we had that, then I would be able to work, and then I could contribute to the economy. And then we would have a world that's integrated in the whole world, and you could have people marrying people within the different social stratifications, and anybody could do anything, Like if you're see in the past, we have the names John Taylor, John Smith, John whatever, Carpenter, because that's the job you had. Your job was your last name, and you did, your dad did, because that was the tradition. And that, we had limited resources and, limited education. You just learned, apprenticed from your dad, and then you learned it. But now we have more freedom, and you don't have to do what your parents did, and you can go to school for something else. And that's what we want. We want people to be able to do whatever they want, like to cross jobs, switch jobs, go to another country, speak another language, do something else. And you can't do that if you have what these conservatives want, where their idea is that, oh no, there's the smart people and the dumb people, and dumb people work the dumb jobs. And that they should be only having enough money to just work their job all day long, come home, and then go back to work, come home, go back to work, never have time to do anything, because they're dumb. And if you're smart, you go do that other job that pays you zillions more, But it doesn't work that way, because those jobs that people make zillions of, they don't require more thinking than the jobs that you don't make money for. For example, writers, or me, the web developer on here, they don't make money. They just work for themselves, and if there's lots of them, then they're all competing and like not making that much money. But this world, stupid people can just say whatever they're told to say on TV and make millions of dollars, or actors just memorizing some lines, or athletes, or I'm not knocking people who are talented, but and that stuff, making money. But yeah, there's or people just inheriting a lot of money, like the Waltons, And so that creates these cesspools of money. For example, before the end of the Great Depression happened because people were, stealing from each other and hoarding, and then people were, during the Great Depression, there was all these super rich people who owned most of the money, and they didn't want to spend their money on social welfare programs. They didn't think that would help. But there's about to be a revolution, so Franklin Roosevelt told them, just give up your money, or else I'm going to take it from you. We're going to take it from you, and give up your money, and we'll use it. And so we used it to build all the highways of America. And we put us all back to work, and we had a great economy ready for World War II. And, and World War II helped the economy too, because we had women. We allowed women to get in the workplace. And so, yes, all socialism is, it's basically, it's a step up in the world of democracy, of everybody having their say, which is the same thing as everybody having their freedom, which is maintaining the sacred balance of how it's always been. If we don't want to go into some false thing where we start like breeding like different kinds of people, like stupid people who do certain menial, because we're not going to have menial jobs to do in the future. There won't be no menial jobs for stupid people to do. People are envisioning this because they don't understand that there will be automation. There's automation in the future. Everybody will have so much spare time on their hands that they'll have enough time to learn and read and become just as smart as anybody, and then have a love affair with somebody else who's done, and then have a kid, and so then their kid would then be It's, mixing all the races and mixing everything. And so we're going to mix all of the social stratification as well. Therefore, we have to have just as much money for the lowest money making wage people as the highest. It has to be pretty much within like 10 times. And so, nothing like it is now. So it's like, it's a general outlook. It's a general like philosophy, general philosophy. I think the capitalist one is one of fear, because you think that if you don't, then they're going to squash you because you've been squashing them, and so somebody's going to get squashed, and somebody's going to squash somebody else. That's how it is. But everybody gets squashed if you do that. For example, in Chile, you have such wealth discrepancy that whenever you want to go mountain biking somewhere, it's on somebody's private property, and they have a little sign and fence over there, and you got to pay either a bunch of money, like $10 a day they wanted in this one canyon, or you can't go at all. I went up in this one canyon in the middle of nowhere on some dirt roads. The guy's like, that's private property. But here in Boulder, everything is open and you can ride anywhere you want. So everybody, like, the poorest people in Boulder have a much higher quality of life than the richest people in Santiago, if you're going to have that thing that is the required quality of life, which is ride your bike over through the mountains every day. Like, they're in prison over there. They've imprisoned themselves by all these rich people going, no, mine, no, mine. And then they don't know, nobody uses it. I went mountain biking once with my friend up in this one trail, which didn't really have anything or nobody, and there were these 3 like guards there. I think they were armed guards, just sitting around in the middle of nowhere, and they're like, you can't be up here, you got to go. And I was like, is it your job to kick people out of here? And they're like, yeah. And we were like, oh my god, it's crazy. So yeah, man, socialism is when it's owned by the government, because the government is the people. It's owned by the people, right? Socialism owned by the people, not the one rich guy, Donald Trump. Besides, Donald Trump, he just cheats his way in. It's like, if you cheat, then you're the best. He was doing that speech. Eminent domain's the best. Eminent domain's the only way. It's when the government gets to sequester everybody's land to make like the pipeline through America. That's always been what we've done. And the government gives you good money for it, or it gives you market value for it. And if you're smart, 2 to 3 times. And so it's like, all right. So if you're literate, they'll give you what it's worth, which is what he says 2 or 3 times. And if you're dumb, then you get market value. Which is probably like shit. So he's crazy, man. What the fuck are you guys doing listening to that psychopath? It's so funny, because the stupidest people are the ones who are supporting Trump. The dumbest, poorest people are the most religious. See, this is how it works. These like super rich people who have really negative idea of the world, they go, okay, well, we need people to vote for us, vote for our stupid ideas, and so all we have to do, let's just pretend we're super. Who are the stupid people? The religious people who are illiterate and just go to church. Let's just say that we're religious and we love our Jesus, and then they'll follow us, and then we can do whatever the fuck we want. We can be like, oh yeah, fucking socialism. They don't like their God. Oh, that was convenient for them, wasn't it? How the socialists, oh my God, those socialists and those communists in Russia really shot themselves in the foot, shot everybody in the foot when they decided they were going to reject God, because then the Americans go, hey, look, Russia, communist, socialist, oh, and also atheist. Communist, socialist means atheist. Capitalist means that you like God. No. Jesus said, if somebody steals your coat, give him your other coat. He said, if somebody slaps you on the cheek, give them the other cheek to slap, and then it's harder for a rich man to go into heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, and that the meek shall inherit the earth, and that's what they're talking about. They're talking about socialism. They're talking about rule by the people. Think about it this way: if everybody's educated and can read and write and knows everything, then everybody will be qualified, more qualified than even our founding fathers, to vote on everything. So then you would have direct voting on certain laws. And so that's the direction of socialism and communism. People directly to vote on the laws of their company that they work for, because it's owned by them and it's owned by the government. People like to these conservatives like to right-wing people like to say that socialism will bring the rule of the few, because of, oh, Russia, look, they have the rule of the few and they're communist. Well, Northern Europe and Western Europe have socialism, but then they're like, oh no, but they're small countries. How can you manage a big country? What's the difference? It would make it even easier with a big country. It's easier to mass engineer stuff if you have if you with stuff like that and designs with or it's more of a benefit and it works better if you do it with a big country. And you can have and you can preserve the different local customs and laws of the local people. For example, it's the capitalist right-wing Republicans who are the ones who want to legalize weed and have the Walmart and Safeway and stuff dictate that I can't be a fucking midnight stalker just because I'm a stoner. That's the exact that's the exact opposite of what we'll buy. It's weird. It's like I get these comments sometimes, on my website, on my YouTube channels, and then you hear people on Fox News bickering, and then the comments even to me when I make comments on Young Turks, and you can't have a two-way conversation. You have one of these conservatives say something like, "Yeah, Bernie's gonna take over the," like, I heard Alex Jones is all against Bernie Sanders. That's too bad. Alex Jones has gone off the deep end. You're like, yeah, Bernie's going to try to take over the whole world and take all of our rights and become the emperor or whatever and give all the money to the WHO? Like, what the fuck are you imagining now, man? Like, something put like crazy juice in the water. So, hey, if there's any super conservatives out there who want to do it two-way with me, that'd be cool. Skype two-way. I'll figure out how to work Skype. We could have a philosophical conversation about the ideology of capitalism versus socialism, and I'll promise to get really fucking high just to give you an advantage in a conversation. But yeah, man, it's like it's a general outlook on life. There are not two different kinds of people: the smart people who control it, and then the stupid people who are like, no, I have to work all the time, all day long, and only work, sleep, because I'm dumb. And then there's like the rich guy who gets to be like, yeah, throw money everywhere. Yeah, like, what? Dude, snap out of it. Snap the fuck out of it, man. We're going to live in a future where everybody has the freedom because it's automated. We don't have to be working all the time. Doing what? Work all the time doing what? Like fanning me? Rich people like picturing people fanning them with fans? It's more elegant to have your wind given to you by an actual human than the fan. It's like, what? No, it's going to be automated. People are going to have time. So allow people to. So just try to have as much money in the circulation to people. Besides, the economy works better when everybody has money to spend. When everybody has money to spend, then it just circulates and people work. When one guy gets all of it, he just his little sack grows. But I already talked about that. So what we have to do now is go pop that sack, bleed all that money into the circulation, then kickstart. Like, what don't you guys understand? Like, are there any like car mechanic ultra conservatives that are watching this video? Like in the car, don't you have to inject fuel into the motor for it to ignite? You know what I mean? You can't. So yeah, let's see, but that's long enough. Okay, peace out.